What's happening, everyone? Welcome to the Sportscast. It's me, Andy Grant. I've got Gary Judge here with me from Across the Park podcast straight after the derby. We've got Muskie in the studio as well. And this is, if you're watching on YouTube, our new look studio. We've mixed things up a little bit. The changes we've made, to be honest, people won't be able to see. It looks nice from where we're sitting, but hopefully if you like the background, you like your football memorabilia, then it'll be something nice to look at as well as mine and Gary's face. Before we get kicking off, this week, for those who jumped on the fancy football, is payday week. So it's week 10, which means we're going to be paying out. And if you're on Patreon, there's a fella on there who shall not be named called, what have we called him? The Scout.
The Scout. Are you going to say his name then?
He's called The Scout, and each week he gives a fantasy football update. Even if you're not in our fantasy football league, it's worth signing up for Patreon, because this lad, who shall not be named, we call him The Scout. His things every week are bob on, and without giving his name away, he's up there in our league.
He's doing well, yeah.
I'm not going to say his position, obviously, but he's flying. Okay, he's doing well. He's doing well. So it's worth, if you're big into your fantasy or you're in your own leagues with your mates and stuff like that, it's worth having a little look at his review each week that he does. A brilliant, detailed review, and you might bump up your own league table with his advice. So nice one for the Scout on that. We had our football betting tips last week. It was so nearly like ecstasy, and then ecstasy quickly turned to tragedy, because we were waiting on. We were waiting on. We were waiting on one team. It was 0-0. He scored. He went 1-0 up. Just as the bet was coming in, another team that was winning 1-0 conceded within the space of 30 seconds. So we never got the bet up last week. I apologise, but we'll go again this week. I think that's housekeeping done. And again, if you do want to support the pod, to get involved on the Wednesday show, etc., then do sign up for Patreon. Loads of perks on there. Right, this week, gonna have to start with the derby, aren't we?
Fortunately, yeah.
How are you feeling about it?
All right. I mean, we previewed it as a four, didn't we? I mean, I predicted 0-0. Should have been 0-0. We get to that in a bit, but
lad, please, let's not have one of these shows where, like, lad, you're an intelligent fella, and we can talk about loads of things in life, and that's really good. We don't always agree, but we at least can. Yeah. Let's have one of these. Let's not be silly today.
Let's not be silly about what?
At
0-0, you should have been down to 10 men. Is that not a fact? Is that not a fact?
I think it would have been extremely harsh.
Extremely harsh. You're saying Konate's second foul was extremely harsh, and Ashley Young's wasn't.
Okay, let me rephrase. So
you can't have both.
Okay,
go on.
Konate's 2 fouls, right? I think for example, then the second foul he makes, if he's not already booked, and that's maybe a 0-0 game or whatever.
It's a cynical foul. It's a cynical foul. You're recovering as a defender, and the attacker gets away from you, regardless of how many recovering defenders are. It's a yellow card. It's a professional foul. I haven't heard one person, even Reds, disagree with the fact that should have been. Klopp was right out of his seat, literally dragging him off.
I know, yeah.
The minute, because he knew he got away with it.
Said he said he was lucky. Yeah. I just think that,
and up to that point, my point is, I said it tongue in cheek there. My point is, up to that stage, in fact, up to the penalty, he didn't really do. He had loads of possessions. Don't be wrong, isn't it? I wouldn't for a second say we deserved to win the game. No. Yeah. We didn't do enough. We didn't show enough ambition. But I can't really blame the manager for that when he goes down to 10 men. But he just didn't really have a chance.
No, listen, I tweeted that exact point, saying fair play, Everton. They knew how to play the game. They frustrated us. They knew how they wanted to kind of set up, and they did.
And what's annoying exactly for me is we didn't get a chance to show any ambition. I mean, look, first 20 minutes or whatever. First 10 minutes there wasn't much in it. Once you've got your foot on the ball and steady yourself and stuff, you were the better side. You look more of a threat in the first half than you did the second half, up until the penalty, and then things opens up a little bit. What frustrates me is that obviously the sending off, I can't argue with the first one. I think the second one, he's stupid for going to ground, but I think Diaz plays for it. He literally leans into his foot, and I don't know. I don't think VAR is allowed to interfere and say it's not a yellow card. I might be wrong there, because he actually gets a red in the end, but I don't think it's one that the VAR could say it wasn't a foul, therefore if the ref deems it to be a foul, then it's a second yellow card. But I thought that was a little bit, Diaz was playing for it, he knows his man's on a yellow card. Ashley Young was stupid for diving in, but the minute he goes off, and obviously there's no tactical change, we've got to just soak it up. Now, if Konate gets sent off, which he should have done, I know 90% of the population if not more football watching population have said he should have done, then we've got a chance then to then go and show some ambition. We've got a chance to show some ambition again then.
Okay, so you're telling me then...
I'm not saying we go on and win the game. I just think the game changes.
This is the bit what frustrates me there. So you're saying then if Konate gets sent off in, let's for argument's sake, the 60th minute, whenever it was, then that suddenly then gives you a chance to show ambition. What happened to the 60 minutes prior to that?
Because we only had 10. We had one man less than you against the better team.
Like pretty much the whole of the first half. It was 11 to 11.
Against Newcastle, by the way. You sat there for 89 minutes probably up until.
But we
Nunes
won 2-1.
Yeah, with 10 minutes to go, you didn't do nothing until. Hold on. You've done nothing. You didn't move out of your half until 10-15 minutes to go, and then threw Nunes on and thought we might as well go for it. We didn't get to that point. We were 25 minutes off being at that stage.
What minutes Ashley Young get sent off in? Right on half time, wasn't it?
It was the 30th minute.
Nah, it was later than that, wasn't it?
It wasn't the 43rd minute. We had a good 10 minutes.
Really?
To hold out, yeah.
I just think that, you know what, I thought it would be 0-0, and I thought it was going to be one of those games that took a set piece or a moment of brilliance or something to.
It was a moment of idiocy from Michael Keane, and you know, when we spoke about it from the Everton point of view, you know, forget about the referee's decision. I thought it was a bit harsh, the second yellow, but at the same time, I wouldn't like go on all day arguing about it. I think it's one of them. You know, I wasn't at the time thinking this is a joke, but on top of the Konate one, it is. I can't remember what I was going to say then.
The point is, the only thing I'll say is, yeah, look, you know what, I am probably wrong. The Konate should have been sent off, but I still don't think that changed the result though, because we were going to score at some point. It was
what tells you you're going to score? That's the bit I can't.
The fact that you didn't touch the ball and we were camped in your half. But the whole second half.
Hadn't created a chance up to that stage.
No, we hadn't. But I just think it was one of those things where the more and more, you know, he throws Nunes on, he throws Harvey Elliott comes on. I thought he was really bright.
They haven't made any difference.
Harvey Elliott was brilliant when he came on.
When we were 1-0 up, he started looking brilliant because we were having to push men forward and you get more stretch. But
they would have got introduced to the game like you've just used the Newcastle example, and I believe it was going to happen.
No, listen, I think going back to the start, the point I was going to make is, I said 0-0, almost thinking I can't say Liverpool are going to win this derby. I didn't expect going into that game to take anything from the game. I didn't. I said 0-0, thinking we've got a chance. There's every chance it could finish 0-0, and I believe. And again, we could sit here all day till the cows come home and argue what could or should have happened. I think it would have finished 0-0. I think we look comfortable. Going back to that was the point I was going to make. That from an Everton perspective, the sending off was stupid on Ashley Young's behalf, and Michael Keane is an absolute clown, and he shouldn't be anywhere near a football pitch, let alone playing in the Premier League at one of the best, you know, against one of the best teams in Europe. So it's no surprise to me that if you put Michael Keane in a pressurised situation, that he does something stupid, because that's all he's done since he put an Everton shirt on. So I can't not criticise the manager for that. Honestly, mate, he's an absolute. It was up there with him and Tom Davies for the two most embarrassing footballers I've ever seen put on an Everton shirt. One of them's gone now, and I think he's shown again for Sheffield United that he's nowhere near the level in the Premier League. But how Michael Keane still gets minutes is beyond me, and I can't criticise anyone else. I can't criticise Michael Keane anymore. I always say, like, he must be thinking he's won the lottery every time someone asks him to go and start on a Premier League game, let alone what he's getting paid. But the minute the manager puts his name on a team sheet or goes, Michael, you're on, he's like, oh my God, what's happening here? It's happening again.
Would you not have a go at would you not have a we will move on from the derby, but would you not have a pop of Ashley Young, because given his experience?
Yeah, I did. I've just said that. It was stupid.
No, I thought as well, Sean Dyche, as he was walking off, Sean Dyche didn't look best pleased with him. I don't know if it's got said after the game, but I
mean, it should have done. I can't imagine Sean Dyche being complimentary, because I didn't say it, I don't think, on our particular preview, but I definitely said it on the one as I'm with Michael Ball. He was the player I was worried about, because he got booked early against Brentford and just about managed to stay out of trouble. He got booked early on against Bournemouth, managed to stay out of trouble. Eventually, you know, that was going to happen at some point against better players, obviously, in your wingers than he was playing against Brentford and Bournemouth. But a bit like Michael Keane, it took you know, a host of stupid mistakes for Dyche to take him out of the team and bring Branthwaite in, and Branthwaite managed to keep the shirt now. Who again I thought was very good again in the main. I feel sorry for him that he ended up, on the losing team. But hopefully that's the case with Patterson. Hopefully Patterson can come in the get in the team and keep the shirt. That's the only positive.
It's funny, there was no real kind of just getting into it and straight away, boom, just into that's just what it still does, done at the derby. Do you know what I mean? Just hang on, well, it's just one of them.
Yeah, I know, but look, just from a summary point of view, I don't for a second, regardless of decisions, not decisions, I'm not turning around saying we got robbed, we should have won at Anfield and all that. I just think we got denied an opportunity, and I think the decision to not send Konate off was as bad as I've seen in the Premier League, and that's not me being biased. Like, I just think it was. I haven't heard anyone.
Was you asleep for the VAR Tottenham game last week?
Well, no, obviously not. How could we be asleep? If we were asleep, we got woke up with the biggest alarm ever. Every person on the planet moaning about it.
I just think it swings and roundabouts, innit? Usually have one.
So it swings and roundabouts. No, it wasn't swings and roundabouts when you were getting out off by VAR. It was, this is a disgrace. No, replay needs to be a replay.
But Everton have moaned just as much, I've seen on Twitter, about the Konate thing.
Oh, we have, yeah.
Of course, which is fine, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, in a couple of weeks, you'll end up getting one that was a bit lucky.
We're not one of the Sky 6 or what it was. Or
we'll be grateful like you're not, otherwise you'd be on a R12 every week, if you were.
I'd enjoy that. At least we get some decisions.
As you can see, Gary's still a little bit temperamental from the weekend.
Yeah, I was fine up until you started.
Before you move on, can you talk a little bit more about Branthwaite, though, in terms of, like, is it one of those where he has a game like that? And,
no, he's been...
But eyes go on him, saying how great he is.
Do you know what?
Shit, it means that someone else is going to come in and take him away.
He's a very good player. He's only 21. He's had a season at PSV playing in Europe, and it's not a fantastic league there, but he's played in Europe for a season there. He's come in. He's a very, very good player. He's a very good defender. He's very accomplished on the ball. It's just inevitable for me. We're not a club that are in the position to be paying probably the wages that his agents will command in 12 months' time, and we're certainly not a club that's in a position to turn down bids. And good luck to him. The way I always see that, whether I'll admit it at the time or not, if we get players that other clubs are coming in for, then they're doing all right for us, and fair play to him. I think him, possibly Onana for different reasons, he flatters to deceive a bit more than Branthwaite does, but he's just one of them players that ticks a lot of boxes from a athleticism point of view and all that. So I think those two are probably the ones that at some point over the next 12 months will get taken away from us. But as long as we get good money for them, and in Branthwaite's case that he puts a shift in between now and then, I'm fine with that.
I think that's arguably the frustrating thing, and last thing I'll say is, like, you look at him and the left back had decent games. Salah was kept quiet all game, and yet he still ends up conceding 2 with Salah. But for the majority of the game, he had Salah in his pocket. And
that's what I mean. It is frustrating because going into the game, we were worried about Mykolenko against Salah. It was like, oh god, it was like you almost didn't want to look every time he got the ball. But after 20 minutes, you thought he's done right. He stuck to his task, and he's a good defender. I think if you just focus on that job alone, then you would rate Mykolenko. But on the ball, when we need
so much more is expected now, isn't it, going forward and everything. We got swept up straight into derby chat. One thing that obviously we will mention was the passing of Bill Kenwright. What I will say, that the news came out on Wednesday. I was in the car at the time listening to TalkSport when I come in, and there was some really nice moving tributes, but there were a couple of Everton fans basically saying, you could tell he was an older fella in his 50s or 60s, and straight away just had a popper. Basically Everton fans straight away saying, you've helped cause the demise and stuff. And then you've seen a really weird tweet from Joe Anderson coming out saying that, again, almost blaming Everton fans. And it just made me really sad, because it was on the back of hearing some amazing, lovely tributes. And whatever you think of the kind of footballing side of stuff, a man's just passed away who was clearly a devoted Evertonian. Put his money where his mouth was, especially in the early days, and done what most probably fans would do. Probably never had a whole great deal about how to run a football club, but thought he could do something and jumped in with it. And listening to some of the tributes, what a kind of life he's had and what a man. It was just really sad to think that some people trying to almost point score on the death of someone. Listen, there'll be probably time to talk about his whole thing in weeks and months to come, but I think the news, had come out. And already an hour, almost fans arguing, I thought, which was quite sad.
Yeah, I mean, Kenwright, over the last 5 years in terms of his position and his his contribution to the club. As I wouldn't even say divided opinion. A lot of people have believed that his time to move on was after he sold the club onto Merseyside. But you're right, wherever you stand on that, it's not the time to be discussing it, arguing about it, or otherwise. He's done a lot of things for the club. He's done a lot of things for the city. People get old and they change, don't they? We've all got granddads, uncles, dads, and all that, and you get to an age and you're like, what are you doing? But still your dad, innit? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Evertonians deep down will feel that way about Bill Kenwright, is that whatever the feelings are towards him, he's part of our club and he's a big part of our history. So, thoughts go out to his closer friends and family. There's a tribute from his partner just saying like Everton was everything to him, and I think he's looking down. He's probably just hoping now that the people do pay the respect in the right way, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure the better qualities of people will shine through as they did with Bill at times when when the chips were down, as he's shown the numerous tributes to the Hillsborough victims over the years.
Yeah, I seen Carragher tweeted saying like we always remembered Bill at that time of year, April time, and his famous speech when he said he didn't just pick on the wrong city, he picked on the wrong mums.
Yeah.
In reference to Scouse mums not letting things go. So I also think I feel a bit sorry for him in an age where when you could have money and buy a football club, things have changed so much now.
Yeah.
You're talking billionaires coming and buying them. This is like a fella who'd done well and threw a few million at it. It's a different landscape now, isn't it? And I think maybe the younger fans will forget maybe the era, the era of when you could be like a Bill Kenwright owner. Do you know what I mean? You can't do that now. You're talking about Newcastle being owned by a state. It's not like little old Bill down the road who's got a few million who supports Everton. Those days have gone, and I think...
As I say, though, just to go back to it and be clear, there's two things, isn't there? There's Bill Kenwright, the chairman, owner, and there's Bill Kenwright, the person. And I think most people, and again, it's the time for that, obviously, a hell of a lot of people have come out and talked about Bill Kenwright, the person, and that's really the way it should be at this time.
That was sad. Reading a proper article about him, some of the things he achieved in his life and how well he done, it was sad. So yeah, on the footy then, United midweek,
it was mad that last
Champions League. I mean,
they were awful, by the way. Absolutely.
Well, they're playing against an awful
horrendous
team as well, and you're thinking if they
They
want to
had
get
a
out,
go, though.
no, I know, yeah,
Copenhagen has a go.
if they want to get out the Champions League, you're thinking they've got to go away to Galatasaray. They've got to play Bayern at home. They need to win these two games with Copenhagen, and it took a last minute heroic save by Onana and golden boy Maguire, which was just you look 1 or 2 weeks ago, they are the two unthinkable
villains,
heroes, aren't they? No one. You just wonder though, are United that bad and that result doesn't really make a difference, or could this be some sort of springboard for them two individually and them as a collective?
I mean, what was quite fitting as well is, we spoke briefly about Kenwright, and we're not going to go over this, but we've got to mention it. Or Bobby Charlton obviously passed last week, and it was a huge night at Old Trafford. There was a lot of emotions running high, and Ten Hag was basically trying to focus all of his comments in the media about keeping a lid on it and stuff.
Yeah.
But it gets to the end of the game and stuff, and you're looking at the goal, and you just think that
maybe
to save a penalty in the 94th minute
Yeah.
in any game is dramatic, isn't it? But it's almost like, wow, you got off it there, got a bit of luck. But yeah, going back to the, I don't see it. I think there's a few games this season where United have took points or have won in dramatic fashion, and you're like, okay, well, here's the time to kick on, and the next game they're awful again. I mean, let's be honest.
I'm rubbing my head though into thinking like, I was impressed with Ten Hag last season. Got to 2 cup finals, thinking I'm a little bit worried here, but
I still maintain. I think he lost the dressing room over the whole Jadon Sancho thing. I really do, because I think the minute that you stop believing in what your manager stands for and what he's asking you to do, that 5-10% of intensity on and off the ball goes from it, and you're starting to play as individuals. Maybe it's half the dressing room are buying into it, half of them won't, but there's still not that same fluency and cohesion that they had last year. On the ball, I mean, defensively, since Ten Hag's come in, I think they've been pretty suspect anyway, but on the ball, they look like they've had a bit of a clue, haven't they? A bit of an idea. You look at the team sheet still, and it's like, how's this team not taking them apart?
But even that though, I think United, for years and years and years, United have always been a team that you just look down the team and it's just riddled with superstars. I'm not really seeing those big names jumping out anymore, and yeah, which is mad because again, how fast things can change in football. Last season, I was really, really worried, thinking they have a decent summer in the transfer market. You know what I mean? They might.
If anything, I wouldn't say I'm the opposite. I don't think it's full of superstars, but I think there's too many people in that team who think they're above the rest of the team. Maybe thought Sancho was one of them, but you've got Fernandes who's like that. You've got Anthony on the wing who's like that as well. He's rolling he's rolling his eyes all the time. He's shrugging his shoulders. I think there's too much of that goes on. I think Casemiro can be a positive influence on that, but also I think he almost gets a cob on with some of the other players because they haven't got that same kind of same mentality that he's got. But I think there's deep-rooted issues there, and probably not just the coach, but I think there's a lot of personalities in that squad who take the first chance to just jump off.
I think with when it comes to them as well, is that they're on wages of superstars, but just not at the level of superstars.
We've been there.
So that needs a full rethink as well, whether it's from Ten Hag or if they bring someone else in, if they have a change within the ownership and all that kind of stuff. But it's one of those things where it's like they've kind of got to get rid of all of that deadwood to then bring new players in, and that can take time again.
It's another transition in itself. Isn't it?
Which we thought they were kind of on the right side.
I've got some of the players in there who I think who've got that more like Man United attitude. I mean, Scott McTominay, as much as he divides opinion, he's been amazing for Scotland when he's carrying the mantle, and I think at times for United he can be like that. We give away a late penalty last night, but I think he's the type of player that I think they need more of. I think Højlund will come good at some point. Garnacho's a top player. I think they have got players in that squad who are more like Man United players, but you're right, I think at times they're in the minority, aren't they?
Well, it's like, say, the name, like the big, like Fernandes, you think the money is on Casemiro, you'd want them at these times.
Casemiro's been out, hasn't he?
But even, you hear about loads of players being injured, but they still have a presence in the dressing room.
Yeah.
You're just like, if you're paying him the big money, like Muskie said then, and he's just come with, he's got the medals already to prove, you just want more from them, and they're not getting nothing at all, are they?
Well, on the opposite side of the coin, a team that are probably getting more out of the players, and a manager who's getting more out of the players than you'd expect. Spurs and Postecoglou, they're still getting results.
I was going to go on before Spurs to go on saying that maybe would United's fortunes have been different if they'd got Kane, because, and it's obviously linked onto them what you're going to talk about Spurs, but it's that whole chat of who's kind of, is it Man United gutted that they didn't get him? Is it Spurs buzzing that they actually finally got rid of him and started playing football? Or is it Bayern Munich now thinking this is the last piece of the jigsaw, we're going to win the Champions League? Because there's 3 teams there who were all affected by that transfer saga. I think United are going to feel the most hard done by, because I think as Kane's proven, he can he's a goal machine, isn't he? I think his record,
getting goals, but Bayern are on top of the league at the moment. They're not. They haven't been terrific in the Champions League. Like they're winning games.
They're going to qualify, aren't they? And but him individually, he's scoring goals, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's which we knew he would. But like you say, Bayern, and then on the Spurs debate, I think 4th in the league, was it? 4th or 5th in the league, Bayern, and obviously Spurs sitting top, which is just.
I think Bayern are 2 points behind top, and then Spurs are sitting top of the Prem.
And there was so much worry, wasn't there, really, about what are Spurs going to do if they get rid of Kane? Big Ange's got this huge decision to make.
Do you know another ironic bit of the puzzle as well? The heavy rumour is that Alonso was offered the Spurs job and he turned it down. So Alonso's now manager of Leverkusen, who were top of the league in Germany. So he could have went there, which would have denied Leverkusen probably having a better coach.
Wow.
There's loads of little bits in that whole like merry-go-round that have impacted on both leagues. But I mean, I don't personally think Harry Kane will be sitting there going, "Oh my God!" But he'll be looking at going.
He will if they win the league.
He will, but he'll be thinking.
Long way to go.
Very Spursy to just like have a really good run. And
although saying that though, they do remind me of like a Klopp's first season, where like they've come in, got potential, no doubt about it. It's like the likes of Son and
I think they remind me a bit of Leicester when Leicester won the league.
Nah,
I do.
Leicester
got the steel in the midfield. They got good wingers. They got a forward. I think. Go on.
But with the manager though as well, like you had Ranieri, who was very a kind of. What they call him, the Tinker Man and all that. Whereas I think Ange's come in with just energy.
He's a unique personality though, weren't it? I just think if you're a team that comes round the back, if you like to win a league or you do it unexpectedly, now I guess the caveat of that season is that a lot of the big teams has an off season, which it could happen this season. I just think you need a unique blend, and I think alright, he's not Ranieri, but he's still a very different character.
It'd be a lot less of a
different
shock though if
personality.
Spurs won it than
Oh yeah,
Leicester.
of course. But I don't know. I mean,
Well, the thing
we're
is,
Leicester up against better teams than
no,
exactly. That's
When-
what I mean. So the
Oh,
point is,
okay, yeah,
Leicester
yeah, yeah.
were up against Tottenham and Arsenal, weren't they, this
Yeah.
season? City were kind of off it.
Yeah,
Yous were off it.
Liverpool miles away then, yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
so
don't
okay,
know.
but
I think it would be just as big a shock. It wouldn't go down, obviously, in the
Yeah, because
Leicester odds.
I was going to say, at the start of the
300 to 1 or
season,
whatever.
Leicester's odds will have been much
5,000 to 1, I think.
longer than what Spurs were at the start.
I think the thing with Spurs is, no, I don't think they'll win the league, but I seen a stat this morning that's something like the last, 20 years, a team who've gained that amount of points in the first, 9 games, only once have they not finished in the top 4. So you're pretty banking on now Spurs finishing top 4. And I think if they get top 4, then, it's got to be a huge success. It should be interesting that the longer they keep up this momentum and the longer they stay close to the top, when will top 4 then start looking at being a disappointment?
Of course, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because if you said to them at the start of the season, we'll guarantee a top 4 under a new manager and no Harry Kane,
I mean,
I think every Spurs fan will bite your hand off.
I'm just trying to look at the...
But if they spend up until February top and then they suddenly then go finish second or third, the fans are a little bit disappointed.
Trying to look at our league predictions. Again, class from Postecoglou, because he got asked, didn't he? Like, can you win the league? And he was like, yeah, of course we can win the league. Like, I'm not going to... And again, I love the way he's tackled them questions so far.
Well, it'd be interesting what they do in January as well, won't it?
Well, Harry Redknapp was talking about that, and obviously he knows Daniel Levy quite well in terms of the way he operates, and he said Daniel Levy will not be afraid to put his money in his pocket if he thinks it'll make a difference. And that'll be interesting again. Where does he go? What positions do they go and strengthen? For me, it would be a leader at the back, a centre back that almost gets you over the line, type thing.
I'd bomb Richarlison out my team and get someone else in as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Richarlison, and he's almost shown that now at every club and every level he's played at, he's not a prolific goal scorer, but he must have a strong influence on that team. And Postecoglou come out, I think the other day after the game, someone asked him, Richarlison, he said, the way he's putting in on the ball, off the ball, and the influence he's having on the other players can't be underestimated. So,
yeah, I don't know.
Listen, there's definitely an argument. You can go and get somebody who can get more goals without doubt, yeah.
Also, with sticking to kind of European teams, if you like, Newcastle will have been in Champions League football by the time you're listening to this. God knows how they will have got on. I fancy them, to be fair, at home to Dortmund.
Massively.
But the one player, again, who's making all the headlines is Tonali. A lot of people, including the true Geordie, was back on your conspiracy theory of Milan definitely knew about it.
I think it's just absolutely nailed on.
Yeah. I think the bigger question now, it looks like he's going to receive a 10-month ban. Again, without going over it too much, it's just an interesting one because I think on one hand, someone like we spoke about last week, I've gambled too much in the past and I know how hard it can be and how much it can consume your thoughts. On the other hand, though, if he's not only gambling against his own team to get beat or he's having an impact on the play, you've got to make an example of him. And now, whether that example is, a huge fine or whether it's him not playing football, I don't know what the fine needs to be, but, you can't just say, although I do agree it is an illness, you can't just say it's an illness, we'll let him off. Do you know what I mean? So it's a really tough one for me. I'm not sitting on the fence with it. If he's been gambling on games he's been playing in, there needs to be some action against him. I just don't know what it is because it is an illness. So it's such a tough one. I don't know what the right answer is.
We spoke about not gambling, but we spoke about like addiction or illness or like, and the way that the Premier League, from my experience and cases I know, they've actually kept things under wraps and said, right, this person's staying out of the limelight, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And a few people have kind of half said this, but I don't think anyone's really put their neck on the line and says it. I feel like it's been handled poorly, to be honest. I agree with you.
It wasn't really on the Prem, though, was it? It was on, like...
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There should have been an embargo put on it, in my opinion. Now, it could have been revealed after it, and maybe, you tell clubs internally what's going on and what the procedure is, but in cases where players have been found to be taking drugs or to be drug addicts, it's been covered up. I know it has. I know 3 examples from 2 different Premier League clubs where players have been found to have been taking drugs. Now, not necessarily performance-enhancing drugs, but drugs nonetheless. And obviously they committed a crime, they're in a position of influence, blah, blah, and it's been said, right, okay, what he's going to do, we're going to do this, we're taking them out for 6 months, putting them in rehab, blah, 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 okay, that's fine with us. Now, I'm not advocating, I agree with you, I think the punishment needs to be strong enough to deter other people, but as you say, if you've got people that are addicted, or if you put another word to it, who are ill, nothing's going to deter them. You know, when you're an addict, you don't stop at anything. And you find ways to feed your addiction. So, and
taking football away from him, which is arguably probably the one thing he sorts his head out, to be honest. One
of the books that I know you've read and I've read, and it's one of the most powerful books I think I'll ever read, is Paul Mason's Addict. Oh my God, addicted to everything. Drink, drugs, gambling.
It's a really powerful book.
And the one thing that shines through is he just said, like, I never missed training, never missed a game. Like, that was my escape. Once he steps on
the pitch, then
that's it.
All the problems would go. Then he'd be happy.
So that's the bit. And Rob Lee spoke about it quite well on TalkSport this morning. He just said, look, that's the thing that concerns me on a personal level, is like, what's that doing to the person by taking that football away from him. Now, I know you can't avoid that, but I think there's a way. You know, you've got not only the fact of taking football away from him, but they're also his reputation's in the toilet now as a footballer as well. So it's like, if you take someone out and you say, right, let's say he's got an injury, he's not allowed to play for 12 months, but he's got an injury, call it whatever it is, but he can't play, and that's it. Then at least he can train with his teammates every day, he can do this, he can do that. He realises to a certain extent he's been given something of a pass, but he's still not allowed to play for 12 months. I just think I just think it could have been handled better.
No, I
from
agree.
a personal point of view, and also,
and if you're saying
still could have been a punishment.
If you know it's being done as well, then you're thinking, why has it not been done?
And the other thing is as well, like, you know, it's interesting, and I don't know, I'm sure there'll be some kinds of control. Surely the first thing you should be doing is going, should this man be getting paid 150 grand a week while he's got an addiction? Probably not. We need to step in with him. I'm not saying stripping him of his assets, but he's got wages there. Let's be not paying him 150 grand while he's still an addict. We put it to one side, you put it in a
great shout,
Paul Mason's another one who spoke a lot about that, saying that there was money readily available to me while I was still an addict. People are giving me money. I'm like, the only way I know to use money is to spend it on drink, drugs and betting.
I interviewed Stephen Corker on the podcast during lockdown, and he was saying it was so easy for him to get access to casinos and people giving him money, because they knew on Friday he was getting another 100 grand. So it's a constant, it's okay, we'll give you what you want because we know you're getting paid.
Again, all these things, like, you know, you've got a lot of people like Stephen Corker, who's been outstanding, by the way, in terms of the way he's spoke about his addiction and the way he's tried to support others. They're the people who should be advising on stuff like this. They're the people who should be brought in.
It's not rocket science, is it?
No, and look, there's two sides to it. I think what you said, spot on. There needs to be a heavy punishment for it. He's obviously influencing fixtures, etc., etc. But personally, and in terms of legacy of making sure it doesn't happen again, I think more needs to be done to support him as well.
Yeah. And also this weekend then, so you've got you boys are up against West Ham away, Liverpool at home to Forest, and it's the Manchester Derby. David Moyes, what's he going to do?
Yeah, I spoke to a West Ham podcast. I think they're always a good insight. I'm not just doing it to plug our podcast. It gives me a good little feeling. They're at the end of the tether with David Moyes, believe it or not.
Still?
Yeah, like...
Why?
I know. Well, you know what?
Moaning bastards. They won a European trophy.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I couldn't say that I'd be sitting there with the same opinion as them if we'd have won a European trophy, but I know how it feels. You know, just bear with me.
Okay.
So this is
it's going to wind me up. So get prepared to come back with a defence.
No, that's fine. Fair enough. What it is that he gets players in, gets really talented footballers in that can win you football games and they've got a certain skill set. Sound like Liam Neeson here. But he then puts them into a round hole that they can't wriggle into just because he won't change his system. So a system, when he's got a squad, he finds a system, and at first you think fair play, he's found a way to make these crap players look good, and then one by one he replaces the crap players with good players, but doesn't change the system to accommodate the good players. And what the West Ham fan I spoke to, one of their biggest podcasts, was saying is, like, you've got Lucas Paqueta, who's like one of the best creative midfielders in the world. He's playing number 10 for Brazil. Like,
he was unreal against us.
Yeah. But then every other game he gets put on the left and just tucked in like a proper defensive left midfielder. He's not allowed to move. He gets the ball and he's knackered because he's working that hard off the ball. And you wonder why we're not scoring goals. You know, you've had 3 or 4 seasons and he still hasn't replaced Mikel Antonio. And it's like, come on. Like, he said, you just want to shake him. But don't get me wrong, I think the point I was making is that the way that they're playing and the way that they're described, I can actually see us getting something against them. I think they got a game they're away at Olympiacos on Thursday. He said he's actually been going quite strong in all the European fixtures. He said, so it's getting to the weekends, and he said we haven't been losing as many games as we have last season in the league after the weekend games, but he's actually playing the stronger players in the European fixtures and kind of giving them a rest in the following fixture. I think we could nick 3 points there.
Really?
I do. I think the one concern I've got is the players on the break. If Mohamed Kudus plays at Olympiacos and he's on the bench, I'd be relieved, because if Kudus and Bowen play and we try and take the game to them, or because that's what they tend to do, is sit back, absorb, and then hit teams on the counter attack. If you got them 2 plus Antonio on the break, I think they could really hurt us. But I think if 1 or 2 of them is out, I think we could get 3 points there.
Optimistic, lad. What I will say, without making it a David Moyes podcast, I've had this frustration.
I love David Moyes, by the way. So
good, because you're probably one of the only Evertonians that do. And to hear you say that West Ham fans, you know, at the ends of the tether with them, and to know what I know Evertonians think of him, I don't get it. And without going down the whole route again, but I looked at David Moyes, and you know, we spoke about him before. Bill Kenwright, he tried to get Moyes back in until Mashiri kind of said no, going in another direction.
That was in favour of Ancelotti, by the way. The chance that we had to get David Moyes,
well, fair enough,
was when Ancelotti become available, and Mashiri was like, sorry, we're getting him.
That's fair enough. I get that, Ancelotti over Moyes. However, the hardest, you know, we spoke in the Derby preview, the hardest time I kind of found Liverpool playing against Everton was kind of that Moyes era. And you know, Moyes has gone to West Ham, kept them up, he's won them a European Cup, and they're moaning, and I think, what can Moyes do to get some
podcast, right?
respect off his fans?
At the start of the podcast, he went, I used to really admire Everton. Actually, it was when they had David Moyes, and they were always up there. Listen, they're always up there, top 8, top 6, got into the top 4 once, and I was like, pretty sure that's what you're doing now. Yeah. But
it's weird. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. The only way I can describe it from a normal, like, coming away from football, it's like you've worked for this company that has done really well for you, and they give you more and more money, and you're getting better and better, and then eventually you're like, sick of this company, I want to go and work for someone else because I'm not quite getting the excitement that I want, and I'm
ungrateful.
Looking elsewhere.
That word is ungrateful.
Yeah, probably, but it's human nature, isn't it? When you get to a point, maybe not everyone's nature, but generally it's human nature. You get to a point,
I feel a bit sorry for Moyes.
Feel like you can get a bit better. They were saying like he was saying they wanted Xabi Alonso, but he did also
that's
say
a sexier name than Moyes. That's why.
Yeah. He's a better player than Moyes as well. Like.
Yeah, you got Liverpool Forest. It's got to be a 3 points must, can't it?
You'd hope so, but you know, we've been up and down, haven't we? And we've probably dropped points that we didn't want to, and then we've probably gained points where we weren't expecting earlier on in the season. So I'd be hoping that it's just another easier 3 points than maybe last weekend.
I think it's going to be routine, yeah, 3 or 4-0.
Depends on what, obviously, again, we're recording before the Liverpool game on Thursday, so it depends what kind of team he puts out.
I'd like him to put out an easy team, to lose, you'd imagine.
I mean, Toulouse are struggling in their own league this season, and I think they just about got into the Europa League. I can't see anything but a routine win. And last season, if I remember rightly, Forest came and just lay on the back and let them tickle you for 90 minutes.
Forest are half decent at home, aren't they? I went to Forest away, I think it was last season or the season before. It was tough for us.
That game when they played us in the Cup when they were still in the Championship, I think it was 2-1. I think you won, but it was a really good game.
Yeah, I went there in the league. We might have even got beat, I think.
Got beat last season.
Yeah. Anyway, so
the rubbish away generally.
At home, 3 or 4-0, I'd say, and the Manchester Derby, which would be great to watch. It'd be great for a draw, to be honest, or a United win, but I think Man City will, and Haaland especially, I think he'll kick on. Which again brings us to the fantasy football. Again, for those who aren't in it, it's a payday week this week. £100, is it? I think. Yeah. £100 to whoever scores the most points this weekend. So it doesn't matter if you're bottom. If you score the most points, you get £100 sent by me.
I'm getting on the Patreon and reading everywhere is that Scout report this week.
Do you know what though as well? With, like touching on the Scout is even plans his wild card and stuff like that. Like leading up to is like I'm not going to use my wild cards until like game week 8 and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't even know why.
I do that. I try and do that.
It's when you get 2 game weeks in there.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was that much. It was just that he was waiting for certain players to maybe get certain fixtures ahead. He looks like 3-4 fixtures ahead and stuff like that.
Oh no, he's
yeah. There's levels to this game, isn't there?
Yeah, and he's up there like. Right, so
although I was speaking of that, I dropped about 20 places until the Tottenham game. I had Son as my captain and Maddison as my vice captain.
I tried to properly mix it up this week, and I put Brentford's, is it Jensen, is it, as my captain. Just because I tried to think outside the box. They were playing someone shit, and I thought, like, anyway,
It's too far outside the box.
Yeah,
that's way too far outside the box. But few mad things in sport going around the world of sport. Let's say we pick up first on the rugby. Did you watch the rugby last? Obviously the derby. Was you still sober enough to watch it?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I fell asleep through the second half, I think.
I couldn't believe England got beat by a point. Really, really unlucky.
And it was petulance, wasn't it, for the penalty that they got?
But you know what was mad though, right? I think England led in that game for 78 minutes, and South Africa led for 2, and South Africa went through.
If he wouldn't have argued with the ref, and the ref wouldn't have brought it forward 10 yards, they wouldn't have scored that kick.
Mad, innit? They're just the inches of just. So I thought, despite I wouldn't call it a dominant display, but they were in the game all the way, and unfortunately got beat. It's actually been marred a little bit though, because there was an accusation of racism from the South African player to the English player. The Rugby World Cup have come out and said that nothing's going to happen before the final. Which I listened to a guy on TalkSport, and he made a good analogy, and he's basically saying, because this is a big call to make,
it's got to be done right.
It's got to be done right, so you don't want to rush it.
And Simon Jordan made a good point. He's like, the New Zealand players and team won't be planning to not have that player or be up in arms because that player's not playing, because it's like, that's not in the spirit of the game, is it? Do you know what I mean? Whereas if the shoe was on the other foot and he got denied from playing, and then it come out that the accusation wasn't true or he was innocent, then it needs
to be done properly. And I mean, hopefully it's all, no racism happened, but we'll have to wait and see. Also in the rugby news as well, don't know if you listen to the TalkSport segment on this, I kind of got to understand it a bit more. They're trying to do a World Cup, not a World Cup, sorry, before the World Cup.
A Nations Cup.
A Nations Cup, a Nations Tournament. Now, for those who are into rugby a bit more, will understand it far more than I'm going to try and explain it, but essentially it's about money. There's basically kind of... Well,
it was the Rugby World Cup that come up, the Rugby World... What was the Rugby World Cup?
There's basically what happens is at some part in the season, the Northern Hemisphere teams will sometimes go down and play the likes of Australia, New Zealand, and sometimes some of the islands out there like Fiji and stuff. But sometimes they're not.
Basically, they're friendlies,
glorified.
The tests, they're called like tests. And there's no like ranking points or anything scored for them.
So they're trying to make it into a bit more of a tournament. But what that's basically going to do is exclude a load of teams, which are basically, while that's going on.
Well, what's happened is they come up with the idea, the concept, and then the Six Nations who are kind of one company, and there's another company that kind of represents Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, whatever. They've got behind it and they took over it now as an actual business.
But they've kind of outsourced it to actual business that need to make money.
Yeah, they are the businesses.
Well, rather than it being
they're like, two profit and loss businesses.
Yeah, well, but rather than it being like an idea from rugby fans, if you like, it's. And that's where the money side of the thing comes in, which might sound great for some countries, but there's going to be a few other countries.
The best way to describe it, that they mentioned on TalkSport, was like the Super League. A bit like the breakaway, where at first you're like, boss, Real Madrid are playing Man United, or Barca are playing Man City, Liverpool are playing Bayern. After a few weeks, it's like them again, playing again. And I think the biggest point that they made, which I weren't aware of until I heard this rugby expert talking about it, is that there's no promotion and relegation until 2030. So 3 years of basically clubs being out in the cold. We're not going to have a chance to get back in. So,
and I didn't realise how still now rugby's still a growing sport in some countries, and if they're not going to grow the sport if people can't get relegated, then there's other countries.
If you can't play against the better nations, and
you're just going to be playing crap teams while this World Cup thing's going on and these other tournaments are going on. So it's a shame for rugby really, because again, I'm not going to try and make myself out to be a massive rugby expert or fan, but
we openly said those, didn't we? A couple of weeks ago, like, I haven't seen I
love getting into it when it's the
knockout
Six
games
Nations
of the World Cup and
brilliant
stuff. I'd like to watch more of it, and this is a chance to watch more of it, but also, you know, the likes of Fiji initially would be left out in the cold, and they've been one of the better sides in the World Cup.
So yeah, the Rugby World Cup final at the weekend, the All Blacks in South Africa. I'd love the All Blacks to win just because it's the All Blacks. And I just love the All Blacks.
They're like I was saying that they're like the Brazil of rugby in South Africa, like the Germany. They'll try and spoil it.
And a bit of a whistle-stop tour. So you had Frankie Dettori. He is just one of those people that it's just like Ronaldo-esque, Beckham-esque, you know, Roy the Rovers, we've already said, like, you know, it just needs to be him. His last race in the UK and he wins. And what a ride it was, by the way. Did you see it?
I didn't see it, no.
I think 2 furlongs to go. It's about 6. Then he just overtakes everyone right down the outside. And pips, I think it's O'Shea Murphy on the line. Gets up by a head. Unbelievable ride. And that's him now off to America. But like, well, probably until next year. But
yeah, until next week.
But it was great to see him do that. In the world of tennis, so you had Simona Halep. I think that's how you say her name. She's to appeal a 4-year doping ban. So she's already, I think, 32, 33, maybe even 34. She's been whacked with this 4-year doping ban. I just think there's so many questions with regards to this, because I think tennis is one of those sports as well where you don't really talk about it loads until the big tournaments are on.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, this is a case where she's been, I think she might have won, you know, she's won a few titles. She's been number 1, and now I don't know enough about the story. When was she doping? Are some of these titles maybe going to be kind of, was this happening when it was going? And you think, what type of tests were they, etc. Blah blah blah. And she got a 4-year ban, which seems harsh. I think you look at other sports and what people are getting. You know, we're going to boxing in a minute, but 4-year ban seems extreme, I think.
Is this really you saying that the doping ban is not harsh, is too harsh?
Well, in reference to some other, I think it is, yeah. You know, you look at boxing, sometimes they get a year.
Lifetime bans, they're getting knocked thrown about now, mate.
How did Dillian White get popped 4 times then?
Well, no, Dillian White now. Have you even heard from Dillian White? And
you're after his 4th time of being popped.
Well, he wasn't found guilty 4 times.
Canelo's failed the drugs test. Tyson Fury's failed the drugs test. There's all of them.
Yeah, but none of them have been conclusive. That's the point, isn't it? They've never been caught.
Poor old Simona, what's her name? Halep. 4 years anyway.
Needs to get a better scientist.
Yeah, Tyson Fury scientists. Yeah. Anyway, she's 4-year ban, which I'd be interested to read a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't know enough about the nature of the charge.
Yeah, if anyone does, please comment or direct message me. I'd be interested to know. And then you had Emma Raducanu. I don't know why she's coming out having a little moan about her coaches, but she said that her coaches couldn't keep up with her questions. So, like, she's always wanting to learn and ask them new things, and apparently...
She needs to get Boris Becker in, and he's back on the
he's back, yeah. He's served his jail time, and now he's coaching again.
I'm sure he can answer loads of questions about financial irregularities and where to hide your money.
Yeah,
or where to not hide it.
But that's what she maybe needs. You know, that's why her head was potentially off the game, because she had too much money coming in from off the court. He's maybe the perfect man.
Definitely.
But that's a weird way of saying it. Like, that's made it seem like I was too enthusiastic. Like, I was asking them too many questions. Not like I was, like, you know, throwing my toys out the pram all the time. It was like
I was too inquisitive.
Yeah, it's you're trying to flip something on its head to make it seem like you're the good guy in it all. When I think that's the only reason she's come out and said it, because she's got that kind of like black mark on her now that no one probably really wants to touch her.
No one will want to work with. I can't imagine the tennis coaching world to be that big, and she's already been through about 5 or 6 of them.
But do you know what's interesting about that comment as well? I was asking too many questions. I can almost imagine the nature of the questions. So, like, you're saying, look, I'm watching the way you're throwing... Oh, not a tennis coach, by the way. Watching the way you're throwing your forehand, you maybe need to drop a little bit. Why? It's like, well, it's what I'm seeing. It's what I'm a coach.
Having that 4-year-old, where does that come from? But where?
Yeah.
But why?
And it's like,
how?
But I'm trying to make you better. Well, you know what I mean? It's the nature of the questions, isn't it? You might be right there.
Well, like you say, that coaching world can't be... The pool of coaches she can go and seek can't be massive. And if suddenly... You know, you get the offer. Look, Emma Raducanu's looking at you to be a coach. It only takes a couple of phone calls, I'm guessing, to speak to one of the other coaches who've coached her and say what's she like to work for. She's a fucking nightmare. Questions everything you ask her to do.
That's it.
It's like on an interview where they go, what would you say your weaknesses are? I work too hard. Fuck off.
Yeah.
So, be interesting to see how she gets on with when the kind of big tournament starts up again. And then I guess the only really way to finish, really. He's in the combat sport and the UFC and boxing. We had a massive card last weekend at Liverpool. No, Muskie were there. Job done for Peter.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of all he's putting it down as. He did a post-fight interview straight away with the people at Matchroom and his own, and he kind of said, I got the job done, but I was probably working about half of what I should have been. He's quite disappointed in his performance, to be honest. I think that showed throughout the fight. Yeah. And then I think afterwards as well, he didn't seem... Obviously, he's happy to get the belt and to move up and put a decent opponent to one side, like. But I think he was after a bit more from himself in terms of like showing off what he can offer in terms of like, you know, doing a bit more on the inside and all that. He did cut
a bit of a frustrated figure, however. I know. Listen, I think it's a reflection of the ability he's got, but also you mentioned it there. He was coming in against a tricky opponent who I think he was half hoping for more from. You know, he didn't really give enough back, does he? And I think that's where you get the most out of a fight like Peter, who wants to get on the inside, he wants to trade, and he's capable of trading completely, you know, because of his quick hands, he's capable of taking someone apart. But if they're not allowing that and they're looking to try and move away at every opportunity.
And apparently Mendoza came with that tag that he'd actually given more of a fight rather than standing back.
And that's hard. You prepare for that. Your whole camp, you've been sparring with people who are giving you what you're expecting from Mendoza, and you come in, you don't really get the same. I almost think watching the first few rounds, Mendoza was surprised, I think, of how quick Peter was, and probably thought, I'm not getting any change here, and I'm not embarrassing myself. I'm not going to go out and get absolutely sparked. So I think I get it, and I think I was a little bit disappointed. But then when you watch the fight back and I think you reflect on it, I think if you can have the attitude, look, I got the job done. Maybe in his future camps you'll be thinking, well, okay, well, I'm expecting that, I'm ready for that. But if it doesn't happen, I also want to be ready for maybe plan B.
And I think he's got to remind himself that that's his first fight in 7 months or whatever. 100%. So that's just like a player coming back for his first game. You're not expecting him to be match fit, are you? You're expecting to see glimpses of what you've got, but then it takes a couple of extra fights.
Provided you come through easily, which you did, it's an opportunity for him to learn again, isn't it? If he's got loads, again, going back to the attitude thing, you don't want a boxer coming out going, sort of made great victory that, and you'd rather them saying what he's saying and going, there's loads I want to work on, there's bits I want to be better at. I think that should help get the most out of him again in his next camp. But
when's he looking on fight next? You know, Musk?
It's one of those. I think in terms of like him getting like looked at in terms of like if his hands are all right and his fitness is all right, that they're hoping for December to get another fight before the new year. Yeah.
Wow. So another Scouser as well, one that you bigged up and rightly so, Jack Turner. Just
an animal, mate. He's an animal.
He looked it.
Yeah, he's an animal.
The lad that he fought didn't have a bad record either.
No.
I think it
looked like he was fighting a bum.
I think he'd only been knocked down about 4 or 5 times before, or something like that.
40 fights or something.
If you were looking at it from not knowing it, he'd like the fighter, you'd think, God, you should have put him up with someone who'd give him at least half a fight.
There's only that's it. It's a third professional fight, so you can't if you're Eddie Hearn or your Matchroom, or even if you're your coach, you're thinking, oh, steady on. You don't want to be throwing someone in there who's gonna set him back. So it is a hard
Eddie
balance.
was talking afterwards though, and he's already well aware of who he is, which was great to see.
That's a reflection of social media. He's been out in Dubai and he's made some good moves out there because he's got a bit more of a following. He's got a huge following in Liverpool, as you'll have seen, and by the amount of tickets he flogs and the support there. Was he the first fight on?
I think in terms of the... No, he was only the fight before Peter.
Oh, was he okay?
And he was meant to be early on.
Yeah.
Then
and he moved it up
based on his tickets, they was like, we've got to have him later on.
Really, yeah.
Wow. Keep all his fans in for as long as possible.
And the Catterall one pretty much went as expected. I think to a similar extent with Peter, it was like, you expect him from United for him to come in and to just be, come on, I'm in front here, I'm going to fight with you all night. And he just didn't want to go out. Probably his last fight, if not certainly second to last. He almost felt he just didn't want to get knocked out, does he?
Yeah.
And didn't give Catterall the chance. And he's that experienced and that wily that he could do that. So the jibes from Taylor after it, that you couldn't finish your Sunday dinner. I mean, very few people. Is he two knockouts I think in his career, and he's been in with some of the best Uniteds over the course of his career. So. Fully expected results, but I hope for Jack Catterall now that he gets decent
big,
fight.
I just want to get a big payday.
That's what I mean, yeah. A money fight.
And I think that will be in Cattle's head as well. Like, don't do anything stupid in this fight because I want to be thinking about the future. Yeah. So it's like, I've got this fight that I am focused in on for this, like this week or this month or whatever, but I have also got to make sure I don't do anything stupid and leave myself too open that, that puts me back a couple of months or whatever in terms of like, rehab and all that kind of stuff. If they've got like the idea of getting in with Taylor or something like that.
This weekend is the crossover to kind of take us into UFC, but we've got the Tyson Fury and Ngannou fight this weekend, which is mad. I think the amount of talk about Tyson Fury and Usyk in December, which is mad considering he's fighting apparently the baddest man on the planet in Ngannou at the weekend. So it's just showing that like it is a circus. I mean, I know we've all said it was for weeks, but the amount of talk about this fight in December when he's got this huge potential banana skin on Saturday, it just shows you how much he's not even probably been training specifically for this fight.
No.
He's there clearly just to get his 100 mil. Ngannou's clearly there just to get weighed in as well. And it's just anyone, and I probably will end up watching it, it just proves that it's for months he's kind of went, this is ridiculous. I know it is, you know it is, but I want to drag you all along to the bank while I get paid. And I'm a mug for doing it. Probably used to, will admit, will probably still do it as well. I don't know, but I've just found the amount of talk about Usyk still in December, even though we're in the end of October and he's got to fight someone else. Yeah, it's mad.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's happy to talk about the Usyk fight so openly and say that, look, barring anything crazy happening, I will be fighting Usyk in December, and he's already like taunting Usyk, going, "Oh, you're gonna drop out, and if you do drop out, I'm gonna sue you," and all that. It just shows how easy this. I think the only bit I would say in defence of it all now is he needs another fight before Usyk. All right, I think
this is going to be a spar though, Gary. It's not he's having a fight, is it?
It's kind of what he needs. He just needs he needs to get in and out safely. He needs to feel a little bit of those pre-fight nerves and a bit of that adrenaline. And as a lot of the boxing pundits have put it so well, there's no way in a million years, unless Tyson Fury just completely drops his concentration levels, that he's going to get hit against Ngannou. He's going to get hit. But the fact that if he stands still for a split second, he can get hit by the biggest puncher in the world. And that's why still that fear and danger and adrenaline he needs, isn't it?
And that's why everyone's going to pay the 15 quid, whatever it is, and give him this 100 million, because it's just that, if he gets clipped.
Yeah.
Doesn't Ngannou get a bonus for not putting too much on Fury?
I think 100%. 100%.
To let him get out unscathed. Ngannou, there we go, lad.
Dodginess in bloody sport, never mind in boxing alone and all that. It's like,
do you know what I think?
The talks that go on behind the scenes and go, look, this is a big fight, baddest man on the planet, blah blah blah. When it's just them, them two and Frank.
This is where you can hit me, Francis. This is where you can hit me.
It's gonna be like, look, if this something happens, there's gonna be a sign or something, and it's gonna be. There's too much money to be made down the road. Nothing will happen. Nothing will happen at all.
Do you know almost what I think he's done as well, subconsciously via his coaches and other people, because Jojo used to spar with him and stuff, hasn't he? Coincidentally, there's the link with Frank Warren or whatever. I think Joe Jones just said he's the biggest punch bag I've ever sparred. Just keep punching and you can punch him. And if he can get 4 or 5 rounds of throwing, 40, 50, 60 punches around, that's a good workout for him. And if he gets the chance to knock someone out and have, you know what I mean? I think it's almost a perfect tune-up.
Fair play to him. He's conned everyone and he's going to get paid big.
Yeah, he gets tuned up without having to put anything on the line because it's an exhibition fight.
One thing I think that's mad, and we'll move on to the UFC, is he's banned TalkSport and Simon Jordan from going to the fight against Usyk. Which, I'm a big fan of TalkSport, I'm a big fan of Simon Jordan as well. But I think it's so kind of childish, because Simon Jordan openly says that, Tyson Fury is one of the best heavyweights ever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, no one can be above themselves where they can't come in for criticism. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, at times, Simon Jordan's criticised them for ducking the big fights. And they've had this back and forth, and he's turned around and said, you're banned.
It'd be funny if he banned him from the Usyk fight, which is the biggest fight.
That's what he banned him from. That's what
I thought he banned him from the Ngannou one.
Anyone from TalkSport and Simon Jordan, all them, you aren't allowed to come in.
That's quite funny.
I just think, everyone thinks it's funny, but I just think it's like, from like, you know, your sporting heroes, your legends, you want them to maybe act in a certain way or whatever, and it's like, I just think it's that thing, isn't it? It's our own fault as fans, is putting sportsmen on a certain pedestal and realising that, you know, they probably will let you down. Just like humans, your mates let you down, your family let you down.
Yeah, if you didn't like someone, you wouldn't be like, yeah, lad, come here. Would you? You'd be like, nah, fuck you.
But it's a case, though, of, like, he's just said it's his job to give an opinion, and he's given a million opinions that put him in a good light. But the one thing he said is, oh, no, you're not coming anymore. You've said something bad about me. Come on. It's like the whole, you know, going too far off subject, like the Saudi Arabia with Henderson and Gerrard. You know, everyone threw the toys out the pram when Henderson went to Saudi. Does this mean that everyone's kind of, you know, dream would be to Gerrard to one day manage Liverpool if he was good enough? Has everyone just gone, no, you're not going to manage Liverpool now because you've gone to Saudi?
Probably have, to be fair.
No, that's what I'm saying, but it's like people have this thing of, I think with sportsmen, you've got to be able to take the good with the bad. You can't just be like, you know, if you're Steven Gerrard, if you're Henderson, if you're Tyson Fury, you can't just suddenly say, oh, well, you didn't agree with my decision to go to Saudi, then you're not allowed to be my fan anymore.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Come on.
Yeah. No, it is a bit
just a power play, innit?
Massive power play.
Yeah.
And then finishing up on the UFC, you had the sad news that this weekend's fight, next in 2 weeks it is, isn't it? John Jones.
Yeah.
I seen the injury Dana White put out. Didn't look that much in it, but apparently he's ripped a tendon from his...
it's the way he describes it. Made me a bit sick, like.
So, which means he's out, but which means for British UFC fans, it's going to be Big Tom Aspinall going in, which would be brilliant. I mean, I've seen him win in London, and what a crowd he takes as well.
Yeah. That's
going to be in New York in 2 weeks. You just hope that... I'm not saying it's going to be his only title shot. I'm sure he's going to have, you know, many big nights left in his career, but he's taking it on 2 weeks notice.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Is he doing it just
you
because
hope he's ready, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big payday. Yeah, it's a big opportunity, but you always think sometimes is it worth maybe ducking this one and then get a proper camp in, but I guess with his personality and the type of person he is,
and the way the UFC is,
he's not going to say no, is he?
Yeah, exactly. The way the UFC is and the way it's set up, it's like you've got to be ready at that notice. If you're not, then you're not in that. You know, you're not in that bracket of the fighters that we pay better than others. It's a moody little set.
It's a shame for John Jones though, because do you reckon 8 months surgery and 8 months out, and he's only just come back in, hasn't he? So I think he's going to have a tough time. Which also then brings on to Volkanovski, who was beat last week. And he broke down in his interview after you've seen the interview. Really, really emotional seeing him. And again, I talk about it till the cows come home, the link between the kind of military, when you come out the military, and maybe a sportsman. And he basically just said, you know, the time off where he hasn't got that routine, he hasn't got that purpose, he hasn't got that responsibility, he hasn't got his team around him, and it's just him at home with no fight to prepare for. Life just is getting on him, you know, getting on top of him, whether it's whatever he's got going on in his personal life. I can definitely vouch for it. That's one of the reasons I got a dog. You know, coming out the military, away from my mates, away from having that routine, purpose, responsibility, I was drinking too much, I was gambling too much, relationships around me were breaking down, and I was just in a very lonely place, you know what I mean? I was going nowhere fast, and I imagine that's some of the feelings that sportsmen, especially fighters, feel in between fights, and that's basically
it's where the demons come out and play, isn't it?
Exactly, and that was one of the reasons he basically jumped at that fight at last minute. Obviously, I'm sure the money was a factor as well, but I think mostly it was the fact that he just needed something just to get him going again.
Get him back into that routine again.
Yeah, which is... so it was amazing for him to be so open and honest, and it just shows you that, you know, these sportsmen, like I've just said, you put them on these pedestals, but they are only human at the end of the day.
Again, your mate Paul talks about it a lot when he does the podcast with, you know, different successful business and sports people, and they all have that same thing in common. When they switch off or they're not in that environment that they thrive in, they find it difficult, you know, whether it's socialising or whether it's just kind of being able to relax. They always have to go to extreme levels to relax and to switch off.
Well, that's it. He's gone to an extreme level of taking a fight on 2 or 3 weeks notice
just because he can't relax,
because he can't be in his own like without
in his own world. It's sad.
And the thing is as well, he won't be the only one. No. It's just that he's one of the only ones that'll actually speak up about it. So there might be other fighters who he's fought with or in camp with or at his gym or whatever, like, well, he's speaking about me there.
And do you know what? Going back to the Tonali thing, the size of the show is probably a perfect way to end it. That's my feeling on that situation, is that they could have made not more of a positive out of it, but went, look, Tonali could be one of hundreds of players that are in this position at the moment that are all behind the scenes gambling, but they're thinking now, I don't want to be him. I don't want to be in the front of the paper having a 10-month ban and all that. I need to just cover this up and try and protect myself and go underground even more. So that's again, like you're using that example. I think it's a perfect example. The media obviously have latched onto it in a positive way and said, look, you know, it's a normal thing, or there's the normalising it in the right way. Whereas this way, you know, the way that Tonali's not been treated, but the way that it's been,
it's the circus amongst it all. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that could have a bigger, more detrimental impact on those footballers, which I'm certain there'll be hundreds of them, if not more, that are in this position thinking, my God, I need to go into a darker room here and a darker place to try and hide it.
And the very last thing we'll say, but I'm not going to say too much about it because again it's all talking with boxing, you don't know what's going to happen, but Wilder calling out Joshua for a December fight. Who knows? Listen, I'd love for it to happen, but
Joshua's went into hiding a little bit, hasn't he? Fury's had a bit of a pop in him. I don't want to go over Fury again, but you know, the fight that was meant to happen between them didn't come off. He's now kind of saying, look, this is Joshua doing it again. Joshua's been silent, I think, for a good few months.
You got nabbed in by a reporter talking, saying he's potentially trying on a fight in, I think, December and April. Wilder's come out saying the same. So
the thing is, though,
I'd love that fight to happen.
You've got Fury Usyk saying that's going to happen in December. You've got Ben Eubank saying that's going to happen in December. Then does that mean that Joshua is a separate thing, or does he latch onto one of those ones?
No, well, Saudi have said they won't do it. I think that was the thing that put the pin in the original Joshua Wilder plans.
They weren't going to do it.
Eddie Hearn tried to sell it to Saudi, and Saudi went, no, we're already committed to the kind of...
Well, they were going to do, weren't they, both on the same night? And they were all going to earn like 400 million quid. It was going to be Joshua,
What are the odds
Wilder,
that none of them happen?
Fury, Usyk.
Well, the reason it didn't happen is Fury basically said, didn't he? No,
there's too many egos. Yeah. You imagine, you heard the arguments about who's going to walk out first. Imagine who's going to fight first.
You heard that on the
overlap.
Yeah, it's not the overlap, it's the other one, isn't it? It's the overlap.
Stick to football.
Yeah, they were talking about, like, they were talking...
That back and forth, like,
that thing you asked
name first, or...
Yeah, that was class, man.
Chisora.
The story about Chisora, Chisora in the Dillian White fight.
Yeah.
And he didn't want any of the pay-per-view money.
And when he found out how much the pay-per-view was making...
They were in the press conference though, and he went, what do you think, Derek? He went, I'm not saying nothing. And he was like, what do you mean? He went, I want the pay-per-view money.
Yeah. Right, brings us up to time. Hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Hope you like the new look studio. Again, please, if you can spare the £1 a week of Patreon, sign up, get our betting tips, get the Wednesday show, get involved in a fancy footy. You win £100 every week if you want to get involved in that for next season. You'll get the scouts tips, you'll be supporting the boys, and we hope you have a boss weekend. Cheers.